Broadcasting live. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for stopping by once again. You are listening to your favorite blockhead, the only podcast in the podcasting world that can somehow incorporate the Peanuts comic strip 1 minute and then be talking about MMA and warriors inside the octagon the next. And guys, the episode today has been a long time coming. Finally, on this episode, your favorite blockhead is sitting down with one of the best roundtables in the podcasting world, the Casually Kickin It crew. You've got Ed, you've got Nate, and you've got Tom joining me for an amazing episode. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we take you into one of the best casual online podcasts that you can get. Everything from video game experts to sports experts to movies to comics to even Comic-Con, or what they have in Florida known as MegaCon. You are in for a knee-slapping good time. Without any further ado, please say hello to Ed, Nate, and to Tom of the Casually Kickin It podcast. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
What's up? Thank you for having us.
I wanted them all to come in at one time. Good times, guys. So here's what I'm going to do, just for the listeners to help you out. I'm going to introduce you guys one by one just to kind of get your story background. The first one to join us earlier on the show was my friend Ed of Casually Kickin It. To start off, Ed, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about what your background is and what led you into podcasting, and then just how in the world you stumbled across your favorite blockhead? Can you walk us through that for a second?
My name is Ed, and I'm one of the hosts of Casually Kickin It, along with Tom and Nate. We have one of our members missing today, of course, Matt. Was unable to be with us, but a little bit about myself. I guess just a good, fun-loving guy, and just like to talk, and that's what led me into podcasting. I've always wanted to do it. I did the research on how to do it and just continued doing it. I brought Tom along with me, and both he and I are the ones who came up with the name and added Nate and Tom into the mix to create a round table for Casually Kickin It.
Oh, man. Well said, guys. And there you go for Ed. Even though it might have started with Tom earlier we let Nate in for a while, and he's had to kind of hold his tongue for a minute. So, Nate, if you could, just walk us through a little bit about who you are and what got you into the roundtable that is Casually Kickin It.
Well, again, my name is Nate. I've known Ed, Tom, and Matt for God knows how long, and one of the things that we all have in common, we all like the same things, and we're all comic nerds. We both love sports, movies, wrestling, like everything. And Tom and Ed, started the whole podcast scene. They started everything, and originally I can't remember what the original topic was, but we used to have these game nights, and we used to just, all four of us, just kick it and just like talk about everything, debate about like who was the best Batman, to sports and stuff like that. And we were just like, we can just talk about it and report this like on the daily. So that's kind of, I was like, yeah, sure, let's give it a shot. And it's been history since then.
Well said, Nate. I love it. So this is a chance for the other co-host, the original OG of the Casually Kickin It show, Tom, to be able to come in. Even though Matt's missing in action, Tom, what can you walk us through on your side of Casually Kickin It, and what got you so into podcasting with this cool group of Roundtable?
Well, with the actual podcast, it's kind of like what Nate said. We usually get together for game nights, and we could talk all night, talk junk to each other. And it was like, dude, this is kind of funny. We've been, why don't we just put it on a podcast? Why don't we try that out? So Ed got, the stuff, and let's do it. So we started off, and it was like, hey, let's bring Nate and Matt. And then that's how we started rolling. But Casually Kickin It, yeah, both me and Ed came up with the name. The design was mostly him. That was pretty good. I like the colors and stuff like that. But with me, I just want to talk about stuff and get stuff off my chest. It don't even have to be about certain sports or things like that. Just stuff that I can express myself with. And that's how I got interested in podcasting.
Sure. I mean, that makes sense. And yes, I am very impressed with the work that he has done. And to all of you that have been following, I can honestly say on the last episode I did of YFB Appreciation, man, I knew I was going to drop the ball on something. And the group that I didn't thank for how much you've been part of my show has been the Casually Kicking It podcast, because for a while, y'all have been following my show and I've been following yours. And I sincerely appreciate that. I really do. But I didn't get you in on the YFB appreciation. Leave it to me to drop the ball on that one. So now I might regret this, but I'm leaving all three of y'all open for discussion now, because I wanted to ask, we go into the Easter holiday, as we've just passed Good Friday, and then we get into Easter Sunday. Obviously, we're all having to stay home and follow the regulations for staying put for COVID-19. What are some of the plans that you guys have in order for this holiday, whether it's either religious-wise or if it's just with your kiddos doing some kind of an Easter egg hunt in the front yard? What do you guys plan on doing for this holiday season?
Well, I mean, what we're doing on my end, in my house, you know, we just have dinner, we have breakfast, and then right now we're starting to hide some of the eggs before the kids even get out there.
Sure.
But it's in our backyard, and then we have the little, you know, activities for the kids to do. I got 2 kids, so you know, it's kind of rough. I'm in the house the whole time.
Right.
But that's what I've been doing.
There you go. Nate, what about you? I jumped over you, Ed, a little bit.
No, it's okay.
What about you, Nate?
Wait, me or Ed?
Go ahead. You could go.
Honestly, not much, but luckily for me, even though everyone's kind of like stay at home, my congregation does, they stream or they record the services, so I can like go online. I can still listen to the service, and they're doing video now, so it's kind of like they video recording, so it's kind of like I can watch the service, hear everything, and see, you know, from the comfort of my home. And you know, and my congregation does have like a website to where I can still you know, communicate, tithe, and everything like that. So, you know, luckily I don't really have to miss out other than sitting in the facility. So.
Yeah.
First, before I answer your question, I am going to apologize because you did ask me how I heard about your favorite Blockhead podcast, and I forgot to answer the question. So
I forgot to address it. So there you go.
Yeah. So, your favorite Blockhead, a fantastic podcast. I found through Facebook. Facebook has been very nice to other podcasters and sharing a lot of podcasts out there. And I've joined a couple podcast groups, and I think that's where I happened to just stumble across yours and listen to yours because during the day, you know, my job is a delivery driver for a printing company. So I just love to listen to podcasts. So I started listening to your favorite Blockhead and many others that are shared on Facebook. So that's how I, you know, ran across yours.
Sure. I'm glad I can give any kind of entertainment, especially because I do them on the weekends, but people can pick them up throughout the week. I'm glad that you were able to do that as you work your way through the day. Yeah.
So now to answer your other question, for Easter, like Nate said, now services are shown on, multiple streamings, like YouTube, things like that. So I'll watch my congregation service on YouTube, which they post live, and we'll do that in the morning with me, my wife, and my son, and then later probably have an Easter lunch, and then and go from there and just kind of enjoy the day, probably watching some movies. So just keeping the stay-at-home movement going.
Right. I mean, we're all kind of putting on our hat for the sake of the public good. You know, we're doing that's the way we're conducting servitude is here. And again, you can watch your services through virtual church. That's what I've been doing as well with mine. And we're able to tithe online still, no matter what, when that time comes. We've even picked up communion that we can take for ourselves at the house here.
Oh,
so
nice.
So that was a good move on our pastor's side. So thank you guys just for taking the time to answer that question. That's awesome just to hear how we are engaged, whether it's, for the sake of Easter Sunday, but also for the kiddos to build their memories. I love that, Tom. Now to kind of bring it back to the show, I know y'all have said how Casually Kicking It came to be, how the name came to be, and what you guys covered. But maybe from the history, y'all have covered over 100 episodes, which is still an accomplishment in itself. Maybe you can take us through some yeah, absolutely. Maybe take us through some of the highs and lows, maybe some of your best episodes, some that you wish never existed. Yeah, Tom, you're biting at the bit, so why don't we start with you, man, and what you see on this one.
Well,
Let's hear about the show,
I
man.
think I don't know exactly which episode it was, but I don't know. Ed probably, you guys know which one I'm talking about. When I was an Uber driver and I got called, got summoned, whatever you got. I got ringed, and I went to go pick up somebody, and it was in a rich neighborhood. At 8:00 in the morning, I thought somebody, was just going to go to work. So I go ahead and I go and I go to the house. This girl comes out, and the guy comes out, and then she gets in the car, and he's like, "Well, make sure she gets home safe." I'm like, "Okay, I'm just an Uber driver. Why would she not get home safe?" So apparently, I was driving back, and she lives on the other side of town. Apparently, she was a lady of the night, and yes, and that was very, very sketchy for me. And I was like, as soon as I dropped her off, I hauled butt away because it was a really bad neighborhood that we dropped her off in. That was the most uncomfortable thing I talked about on the show, but it was weird. So,
Nate?
I knew exactly he was going to talk about that.
We've had so many episodes. You're right. We've had over 100 and gosh, I can't even keep track. We're approaching our third
30?
year in September, and in the podcast world, that's a pretty big accomplishment because I've had other podcasters on our show and things like that, and their podcasts are still not or are not even around anymore. So for us to be on our third year is quite an accomplishment, and I appreciate that. Yeah, we've had our bad shows. In the podcast world, you have some shows where you're like thinking to yourself, "Man, was that the best show that I could have put out?" I don't know. Or you always question yourself, well, did I go a little too long on that episode? Did we talk a little too much about a topic? But what we like is I mean, we created the show because of enjoying the time we have with each other. No matter how long we talk about one topic, it tells us that we enjoyed what we were talking about, which is the reason why I wanted to create a podcast. I missed those times of being in middle school and high school and having the lunchtime with a lot of your friends, and you guys just shared stories about everything. That's what I wanted the podcast to be. It was just friends sharing their stories about everything. It didn't matter if it was sports or movies or religion or whatever it is. As long as the conversation was great, to have that with your friends is just amazing.
And I have to admit that that in so many ways, y'all do have a good rhythm that y'all continue with each other. I mean, it's fun to tune in. You got a great intro that comes in that's got everyone's attention. It's like, what's all this stuff in the restaurant, the background that's happening? And then all of a sudden y'all come in and you start discussing everything under the sun, but it meshes beautifully. It could be going from video games 1 second, next thing you know, y'all are whining about Tom Brady going over to Tampa Bay or cheering it on. So I've almost I know that's on the tip of y'all's tongue at this point, but the one thing I've got to ask at this point is just because, one, I need to be educated and other people in my listenership need to know about this. Can y'all walk me through how MegaCon works over there in Orlando? Because I'm familiar with Comic-Con and heard some other smaller ones. There's even PowerCon for those that are friends of Masters of the Universe. But as far as MegaCon works, how does that function, and what are some of y'all's memories behind that one?
Okay.
Nate, you dress up
the
for all of them.
Guru of the group.
It pretty much it functions like any other convention. MegaCon, I would probably say, is maybe like the one here in Orlando is probably like maybe top 5, maybe top 4. As far as popularity with conventions, of course, nothing can top Comic-Con, like in San Diego and all, but Orlando has become one of the bigger cities. You have San Diego, you got New York, and then maybe I don't know if Miami's bigger, but in Orlando, we have like a whole section that is dedicated to conventions, like a humongous convention center. And I've gone to like
Two.
4 conventions in 1 year at one point. MegaCon is definitely one of the biggest ones here every year. And I think me and Ed, some of us actually have tickets for this year's convention. But of course, everything is postponed because of COVID-19. But
Yeah.
yeah, I remember our first convention, we all went together. Like we all have pictures and stuff like that. And you get to see so many celebrities. And like one of the cooler things is that the first time we went, all 3 of us actually, um, I think Ed and Tom, they donated to a charity, and because they donated, they allowed us to take a bunch of pictures with a lot of movie props. So we took a picture with the Mandalorian, the Tarsus, the time machine, and we got inside the telephone booth for Bill and Ted's
Bill and Ted.
Adventure. Yeah, and it was just like such a cool atmosphere, like to the point where if you're not wearing like a graphic tee or not dressed up, you feel out of place. But it's so many celebrities, so many things that you can, so many activities as well. You can win stuff, you can buy exclusive things, but yeah, it's pretty much same kind of convention stuff like that. Chance to meet celebrities,
4 days long.
icons. Yeah.
I definitely
Yeah.
feel educated now at this point. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
There was a person that was following us on. I forgot, Ed. You met him through social media, right?
Yeah.
That we met up with one of our followers, and that was pretty good. We posted pictures with them and things. Like we love to meet up with fans, but we saw some of the Power Rangers, the older Power Rangers, which the little I felt like back in the day now, you know what I mean? So what else? Yeah, nostalgic. And then we saw some stormtroopers, some droids, Star Wars stuff. Nate actually was dressed 1 year as Deadpool. Everybody loved
Nice.
pictures with him. So I mean, we got to a point where like going up and down, you could get lost in there. Trust me, it's big, and it's a lot of people. And then you get like there's certain days we got to a point where certain days that we knew we would go because the artists would actually be selling their artwork cheaper because they didn't want to ship it back to their house, wherever they're from. So we kind of know the ins and outs of MegaCon, but I know we have a couple of people that I actually knew that is coming up. His name is Michael Duran. He was an artist that was that he supported us also, and we supported him on the show too. But it was fun to me. It was fun. Nate got to have a picture with Stan Lee. I mean,
twice.
Passed away.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool, man. We have those opportunities. I mean, if you're a gamer, also like Magic the Gathering, things of that sort, they do those things there too. It's a whole. If you're gonna be there, invest in all 4 days.
I mean, it sounds like if it's anything like the San Diego Comic-Con, then that is the one that if you don't go 1 day, you're missing out on a lot because they're very accommodating to all of the fans. That's what it sounds like. And I'll definitely need to be checking in with y'all more when the time comes, when all this passes. I'm going to be interested in all of y'all's experiences with MegaCon again in the future. But I don't mean to cut it off, but I know that some of y'all are chomping at the bit. This is where I really talk my YFB listeners into your show because your last episode, you did your first one with Zoom, but again, y'all were very much, not trying to exclude Matt, but I want to make sure that I kind of cover this. Y'all had just doing a recap. Y'all covered several sports, several movies, several video games, but the big topic that y'all started off right off the bat was Tom Brady coming over to Tampa Bay. I'm going to mute myself and let y'all have at it for a little bit. This should be interesting.
Mr. Buccaneer Hat, go ahead, homie.
Yeah, well, this is Ed, and I'm a big Bucks fan. Nice to meet you. It's fantastic because, Tampa Bay isn't thought of in a lot of people's eyes unless you're a Bucks fan. In the NFL, the Bucks, I know, are seen kind of like the Southern Cleveland Browns. If you're a Cleveland Browns fan, I'm sorry, but I can feel your pain sometimes. So to have one of the greatest quarterbacks come to your team is amazing, and it's taken up a lot of the topics on sports shows, as in Fox Sports and ESPN. And I still have to pinch myself to make sure that this is real. I can't believe it till this day. I mean, until I see game one, it's still surreal. Nate and Tom are not Buccaneers fans, so I'll let them share how they feel about the greatest quarterback coming to one of my favorite teams.
I mean, to me, I thought like after last episode, which Matt is not here, but he's a big Bucks fan too. So we had an argument because he thought that Cam Newton was a better quarterback to come to the Bucks instead of Tom Brady, which I don't agree at all. Because with the experience of Tom Brady, he can make anybody look good. Pretty much anybody look good down the field. And we were talking about that. They have the weapons for it. He's a very good fit for that program, and it's warmer weather. He's getting older. It affects you. Trust me, it does. It's just with Cam Newton, you're just gambling on a broken tire happen every single time he goes on the field because he gets hurt as much times as anybody else. So, and then he was like, one time he was saying, like we were talking about Jameis Winston and his Tom Brady. Like, I would put Tom Brady in the back there over Jameis Winston any day.
Well, Matt also gave the argument that he would take Drew Brees over Tom Brady, and I almost had a heart attack.
Yeah.
I mean, no, not for nothing. New Orleans fans, I love Drew Brees. He's a great guy, but when it comes down to the field, I don't like him anymore. Okay, so.
Well, Nate, you're chomping at the bit, man. I got to get you in on this bad boy.
No, honestly, the thing is, I'm not a Bucks fan either, but I respect good players. Like you can't deny talent and stuff like that. So, like, the funny thing is, it's just like me, Matt, and Tom. Like we've talked about, like, the moment there was an inkling of Brady may leave and where would he go? I thought he would go to San Diego. We entertained the thought, what about the Bucks? I think Ed was like, yeah, what about the Bucks and stuff like that? And Matt was like, no, he wouldn't. I wouldn't take him. I was like, and that's where we will all be like, how would you not take the best quarterback? This guy's got more rings than most franchises, and it's just funny because it happened. So like when the moment that happened, I immediately thought of these guys. I was like, man, we were just talking about this. Like, I'm like, we got to find the recording episode from like months ago, just to like kind of prove like, look, you see, it happened. We spoke it into existence.
Yeah, your fans have to go back into the archives and hear that discussion again because it's like there's no way it's going to happen. Here, Nate's going, oh my gosh, this really just happened.
I wish I could like remember all the episodes because there've been plenty of times where like we talked about something or there were rumors or something came on the line, something potentially coming in the future, and we had a round table about it and talked about what we think might happen or what do we think is going to happen, stuff like that, and it ends up turning out to be that way, and it's like the biggest "you see, I told you" kind of moments. So it's always good to have that recorded.
Yeah, I don't mean to interfere too much when it comes to Tom Brady, but let me just give you on my side, since I'm from south of Dallas, you know very well that I live in the Cowboys territory. And let me put it this way. I'm going to tell what everybody needs to hear at this point. This is Blockhead talking, and you can dispute it all you want to. If we had the chance, let's just say if he were to come to Dallas, you better just be counting your blessings anyway, just to be able to have that leadership in the locker room, plus that spectacle. Because anywhere that Tom Brady goes, he is going to be a spectacle. No matter what, you're going to have an accomplishment that nobody else has. I'm not going to get into rankings on greatest of all time. I'm not going to do that because it really bothers me when people want to look at things like you're comparing something that was so short-term versus like the early days where somebody laid the groundwork for you. But I will tell you, Dallas seems to live in this expectation of a phoenix to rise that is the trio of the 1990s. They're expecting to see Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin somehow to formulate on the field once again to relive the magic that was of the 90s. And it just is not happening. Let's not kid ourselves. The guy that was replaced by Tom Brady was who? Drew Bledsoe. And who did he come down and try to formulate a team under? He
Dallas.
came to Dallas, exactly. So we have had the makeshift off-brands of professional football players ever since then, because you have Tom Brady who rose to the occasion and has this spot. But it seems like every year they have the same thing about how Dallas is going to turn some heads. Maybe in the season, but every time you get to the playoffs, it's the same old story. Why are you trying to relive something that has been written in the history playbooks? I said it here. But all I'm saying is, at least with Tom Brady, I love the idea of him going to another team and bringing his leadership. But my question is, how long is it going to take for the team to really build up the camaraderie that you need that the Patriots had the whole time? I'm just wondering how long that's going to be. And my answer is only time will tell. Nobody likes that answer, but that is the answer. Only time will tell us at this point.
The good thing that I like is that the majority of the Bucks team has been together for at least 3-4 years, those players. So the core is there. The only new piece coming in is Tom. And him being such a professional and such a perfectionist, I think that it might start off a little slow, but it'll all click in due time. And the fact that he's going to have some of the best offensive weapons that he's had since, I would say, Randy Moss, and Gronk and Welker at that moment, because he's had some stuff, but recently within the last few years he hasn't had what the offensive firepower that he's going to have now.
Sure. I have to give you all that. Now, I don't want to get too far off of this point, but y'all covered that a lot in your last episode. You covered even video games. You covered some movies that are out there. But I have to ask you something that's happening in your backyard, because Ed walked me through this a little bit too, and I was educated on this. As I understand it, Florida actually has where a lot of the WWE talent will go in and do their tapings. And so how is that working as far as the one sport that the show must go on? How is that working for there? And what are you guys seeing when it comes to the second one, Dana White, who's saying that we're going to be the next sport that comes in and starts up while all the other sports are still on hiatus? What do y'all think about that topic?
Well, I mean, I can tell you right now that it's really 15 to 20 minutes from where we live. So the Performance Center is where they actually hosted WrestleMania, which is the pay-per-view that just happened this past weekend.
Yes, that's right, 36. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I watched the whole thing. It was entertaining because of the fact that wrestling was entertaining. But the fact the ambiance of not having a crowd kind of made it a little bit stale, to be honest with you. But still, like, I actually appreciate the fact that they're go ahead and the show must go on type attitude. I appreciate that a lot. And the way they're doing it, they're adapting to it. It's still it doesn't drop off. It still keeps going, and I like it. It's entertaining. I watch it royally. I'm a big fan, and I wouldn't have mind going to see some if we were able to. Definitely going to see it because it was supposed to be in Tampa, WrestleMania, but they had to bring it to Orlando, their Performance Center.
I'm an MMA fan as well, casual. I always like to catch the bigger fights because I'm not well-knowledged in a lot of the other fighters, just the ones that they're always promoting and pushing. Now, I would love to see some MMA. The difference between MMA is that they pick locations to set their matches or their cards. Whereas with the WWE, being that it's here in Central Florida, their Performance Center, they have a hub that is stationary, and they're able to pre-record their shows. And I'm assuming that they're probably bringing in the wrestlers. Now, don't don't hold me to it. I'm just assuming that's probably what they're doing to take precaution on keeping the minimum number of people in a certain spot. Um, but they're probably recording their matches in time slots. So they'll probably let two wrestlers know, hey, come in at this time. We'll record your spot, and then you guys can go. We'll bring in the next folks, and then they'll set up an entire show for wrestling, because I know that's how they did WrestleMania. WrestleMania was a 2-part WrestleMania this year, which was pre-recorded earlier in the week, and then they showed it on a Saturday and then a Sunday. Can UFC do that? I don't know.
I don't see why not. Remember Ultimate Fighter?
Very much so.
Why can't they do that type of environment?
Yeah, I can kind of give some insight on that one a little bit in a minute. But Nate, do you have any thoughts on WWE or the moving forward of MMA of any kind? Postponement, non-postponement? What do you think?
Well, I think MMA is definitely possible for a couple reasons. Since when it comes to MMA, it's less people involved, so it's I guess it's a little easier to control. Like, let's say if you're gonna have two fighters, right? If you want to have this match to happen, and of course with the safety precautions of COVID, you can have them be tested before while they do the training, and by the time the testing, once you can literally, by the time the match happens, everybody could be tested and cleared and everything like that. They can literally be checked and cleared to fight and engage each other and not have to worry about contaminating each other or anything like that, because with the time of training, preparation, and everything, since there's only a few people, you have the fighter, the ref, and the fighter's crew. You really don't need a lot of people to have an MMA match go on. You're talking like maybe less than a dozen people. You can have everybody tested and screened, and then still arrange for this fight to happen if everyone's health is checked. I can still see that going on. It just seems logical, like it can happen. So
yeah. I'll try to give my 2 cents on that one, Tom. Is my answer is I still think Ultimate Fighter would be a good idea for an MMA purist. The answer is we don't see the numbers and we don't know what the ratings look like for a show like that. And you got to understand also, Nate's right about how this is a sport that is very closely mitigated and regulated by the federal government. Vince McMahon is not. He's a guy that has his own entity, but, MMA is one that came under close regulations even when senators like John McCain went after it, tried to shut it down because they looked at it as human cockfighting. So a lot of the evolution that led to it, Ultimate Fighter was kind of the Trojan horse that welcomed people in, but that's because they also had a deal with Spike TV. Nowadays, they have deals more with DAZN, ESPN Plus, and if you notice, the ones that shut down UFC 249 was not ESPN. Dana White. It was ESPN and Disney, because you have the merger of those two on a corporate level. So the powers that be that are way above that, Dana White says we're going, until Disney and ESPN came in and said, hold your horses just a second, man. And thus we don't no longer have 249. Well, we have another postponement. So now, because I recently talked to Sam Alvey, who used to be on my show, who was supposed to be on the card, and I asked, are you still going to be compensated? And he came back and he said, yes, we actually are, because now that we've had to wait, all of the guys that were on there, not just Tony Ferguson, not just Justin Gaethje, but people like Nico Price and other people that were on the card are going to be compensated for this until otherwise. So that's coming from my source. They've at least been taken care of. So the answer is I love The Ultimate Fighter. It comes down to they've also expanded many other shows, like they have the recruiting one that's got, Matt Serra in it. They've done so many extensions of it that The Ultimate Fighter may not have the ratings that they absolutely need. They might introduce it again, because I love The Ultimate Fighter. That's where we first saw people like Nate Diaz come into the play. The guy who was on my show, Coach Joe Stevenson, was on the second one, and he had an amazing run with BJ Penn. So for purists, it would be great. As far as the casual fans, they don't know who these guys are. They don't even know who Khabib is, and that's a shame, who is undefeated and defeated Conor McGregor. People know spectacles when it comes to MMA. I'm sorry. It's kind of like the WWE. We are in an entertainment era, whether we like it or not. They want Conor McGregor's. They want Brock Lesnar's. They want Ronda Rousey's. And what we've got
I don't want
is,
Brock Lesnar.
yeah, that's what I mean is that, we've got – and even that was a good storyline for Cain Velasquez to come in. The one guy that took him in a real fight is now coming into WWE. That was a great storyline to build up. I don't know how well they did with it. You guys have followed.
That was horrible.
He got hurt right away. He got hurt right away.
It didn't look like it was successful at that point. Well, guys, I don't really want to wrap you up, but here's my worry. I worry about Zoom being able to cut me off at a certain point. I don't want to lose how much content we have. But I've had a great time with y'all. I'm going to start with you, Ed. If there is one thing that you can think of, whether it's podcasting, your own philosophy, or whatever you want to really share, this is your chance, Ed, to share with the Blockhead Nation. What do you think, if they heard nothing else from this today, what do you want them to know about the Casually Kicking It show, or what do you want fans to know maybe during this time we're in? What's something you'd want to share with the Blockhead Nation? Go ahead, my friend.
I just want to share that, during this time with the COVID-19, let's keep our heads up. And I love how everyone is working together. And that's one thing that I love about our podcast is, it's a group. We all work together to make this podcast. And it's a podcast that's made for everyone. We talk about everything. It's that's why it's called Casually Kicking It, because we're just casually kicking it with our friends and enjoying a conversation.
Good stuff. Nate, I'm going to hand it off to you, but if there's one thing you want the listeners to know today, what is it you want them to take away from this episode, my friend?
Well, one thing I would tell the listeners is to, our goal is to try to record a set. We do this because we like to. Nothing's really scripted. We just, the whole point is, like, if you're not able to hang out with your friends, I want listeners to be able to listen to one of our episodes and pretend that they're like right there in the middle of what we're talking about. That's kind of like the whole goal of Casually Kicking It. That's why we don't restrict ourselves and don't ever want to restrict anybody else. We just want our listeners to feel like they're in the room with us, hanging out. So I guess, hopefully that's what we can give our listeners, and that's what we want to give our listeners.
And I have to agree, because that's how I felt every time. So, Tom, handing off to you, my friend, to really close us out. If there's one thing you want the listeners to know today, what would that be as we close this out, my friend?
No matter what you guys are doing, just if you got something on your mind, record it. Get it out there. That's the only way you're going to share anything. With us, we love to share whatever we want. Your family just as like our Casually Kicking It family. So if you keep on listening, we keep on pushing it out there. We're here to entertain everybody. So keep your head up, and no matter what, even though you got to stay in your house, we're still available for you.
Could not have said any better. And with that, guys, I give you the Casually Kicking It. Thank y'all so much for coming on this episode with me today, my friends.
Thank you
so much for having us on your favorite Blockhead, finally.
I know, it's been too long in the making. I've had a great time. I hope you guys have had as good a time as I have. But as we close out, guys, let me just say, make sure you are following the Casually Kicking It and leave them a review, a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Subscribe to them. Go to their YouTube page. Subscribe. Click the button. Click the bell. And make sure you do all that to follow these guys, just as I have been and will be. And next time when you come on your favorite Blockhead, we're going to sit down with my friend Drew Turner. It's going to be from the Paddler's Playbook. I know nothing about fishing or kayaking, but this guy that's going to come on next week is a #2 podcast in Spotify for kayaking and number 26 on the list for fishing shows. We are about to get some serious insight coming on the Paddler's Playbook with Drew Turner. I'm building him up now. Look forward to that episode next week. Until then, this is your favorite Blockhead with the Casually Kicking It crew, and we will see you guys again next time on next Saturday. Same Blockhead time, same Blockhead channel.